Who better to close out this Black History Month than with a man studying to earn his master's degree in African American history? You may recognize him for a few other reasons. Keenan Singleton has the story on the All-American studying all of American history.
Black history upends the American mythology around history.
Once upon a time, the last place you'd find David West was in a book. You know about his hoop dreams, National Collegiate Player of the Year honors at Xavier, followed by a 15-year NBA career, twice an All-Star and twice a champion with the Golden State Warriors.
Because of the NBA, I kind of just went on this self-education journey. I just started, reading books, and that really got my interest in thinking like, you need to learn more, and you need to know, you know some stuff, but you need to know a lot more about what went on and what's happened. And so,
what keeps him up at night now is studying the darkest chapters of American history at North Carolina Central University, where West is pursuing a master's degree in African American history. It's there that he's found himself in the lesser-known faces, stories, triumphs, struggles, and pain, the enduring humanity of Black American life.
It's a complete reversal from what I was as a young person. I get excited when it's, when I get introduced to things that I don't know, introduced to periods of history that I'm not familiar with.
His classmates weren't familiar with the first chapter of West's life in the NBA. He was simply a history buff known as DW until his own past was cited.
I hate to do this, but are you David West, the basketball player? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, and then I hear her dad say, I told you. I heard that in the background.
One of his professors, Dr. Freddie L. Parker, says West is the best writer in his class.
This former NBA player has been playing in the vineyard of history. He brings a body of information to the table. He brings experience to the table that nobody else in the class does.
West didn't complete his first book until he was 18. Now you can't find him without one. He estimates he's reading 2 to 4 books at any given time.
Black history, what I learned is that Black history, African American history, or African history, those histories are simply the missing pages of world history.
He points to the time period between 1865 and 1877 as the one he's found most enlightening in his studies. That period, fittingly known as the Reconstruction.
History is the story of what has been, and it is only from learning from what has been that we can change what will be.
Keenan Singleton, WCPO 9 Sports.
All right, you just heard my next guest. Keenan Singleton joins the show. Keenan, thanks for joining me. David West did a pivot of sorts. How did this story come about?
It came off another story. I was working on a story on David Fluker, who is the head athletic trainer for Xavier University, works a lot with basketball, clearly. And I asked David Fluker, kind of give me some secondary guys that he worked with that he was close with while he was at Xavier, and he mentioned David West. So I reached out to David West to talk about David Fluker, and then just kind of asked Dave West, what are you up to these days? And he said, I'm studying to get my master's in African American history. And with this being Black History Month, I thought, hey, those really go hand in hand.
And what resonated with you the most?
I just think one quote that really stuck with me, and I don't think I was able to get in the story, but when he's studying these people from the past, he really likes to humanize them. And it's not just, hey, he was the first person to create this or invent this. This was like, hey, what was his life really like back during these days for Black people, which, as we know, weren't easy.
He said in the story that there's a lot more that I need to know. Why do you think that's important to him to know about his history and culture?
I think it's important for all of us to know a little bit about where we come from, right? Because he mentioned also in the piece that there's so much of our history that was taken from us, and it's a valuable history, and it was a valuable history for that reason. That's why it was taken from us as Black Americans. So I think it was important for him just to not only know his history and to know where he's going, where his people are from, but it also is helping him. He wants to eventually teach when he gets his master's and then his doctorate, hopefully 4 to 6 years from now. But he wants to be able to teach. He wants to be a better writer. There's a lot of layers when it comes to him studying for his master's here.
Keenan, I'm just going to keep it real. You and I are the only black sportscasters in the city. We've talked about this before. Our jobs are not to solely focus on black stories, but we do feel the weight of representing the black communities here. How do you manage that?
Well, I know we are the only two sportscasters there in town, but there are other, sports reporters here in town, Tyler Dragon and Keith Jenkins at the Inquirer, Tony Tribble, who takes a lot of photos, Care over at the Inquirer as well. So shout out to them for holding it down. But I think the PC answer is, yeah, we pursue good stories. And if they just happen to be black faces, then all the better. And that's the PC version. I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna be real with you too. I mean, I think it is upon us to tell these stories, because not that other people in the market aren't telling these stories, but obviously it's going to mean a little bit more to us that we tell stories about people that look like us. There's a brotherhood, there is a bond, there is a tribal capacity when it comes to telling these stories. And I'm honored that people that look like us trust me and trust you to be able to tell these stories. So I think, while we don't show bias when we do these stories, I think there is some bias that comes out with like, hey, I want to tell the stories of people that look like me. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's something I could have said earlier in my career, but I feel that responsibility, and I take pride in bringing stories happening in the black community to the viewing audience. Well, Keenan, I really enjoyed the conversation as always. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Happy Black History Month, brother, and to everybody out there.